Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to our Parents Initiative. This is actually the second one that we're hosting online. And I must say, I'm so excited for tonight's discussion slash Q&A slash interview that we're having tonight, because I am the person that we are speaking to. If you don't know who I am, my name is Sivuyisiwe. I, together with my husband Lester, are part of the Next Gen Kids team here at City Hope Church. And we also have an almost 2-year-old son. So when I say that we are in the thick of it, we are in the thick of it. And if your story is similar to mine, or maybe your kids are slightly older or slightly younger, I'm here to encourage you that you are not alone. You are in good company. And I'm really expecting for the Spirit to guide this conversation, to give both you and I the tips and the wisdom and the insight that we need to parent and raise our kids that we've been given. So I'm joined tonight by my co-host. In fact, I'm his co-host, let's be honest, Duncan. He's going to introduce himself and our phenomenal guest speakers a little bit later. They have incredible insight and wisdom that they're going to share with us tonight. I just can't wait to jump right in. I will say, though, before we do, if you have a snack or don't, if you have a cup that's empty, that needs refilling, do that now. Because once we start, you won't want to leave your seat. So I encourage you to do that now. But now that my rant is over and my intro is coming to an end, Dunks, please reintroduce yourself and our incredible team that's here tonight.
Thank you, Sieves. Yeah, I did sort of bully myself onto this initiative because I have two. One that is out kind of on the way out of toddler life,
right?
Really, like when you're getting into like start turning 5, but then one who's in the thick of it because we just turned 3-nager life. So two of those, very exciting, and love this conversation. But we're joined by two very special guests, and I have the privilege of introducing them. They're both not unfamiliar faces to us if you've been around City at all, especially in our initiative space where we're trying to seek to equip you in different spaces.
Right.
Madz, Deysel, is our first guest, and she's going to be joining us. She is an amazing speaker when it comes to anything, and her heart for psychology and counseling and helping people really see their whole self under God is where she loves to do it. And working it in this space in terms of parenting is going to be amazing. And then Taryn Tomlinson has done an initiative on parenting with us before, and Taryn's amazing because she's got an educational side where she's currently a teacher now at Heronbridge College. But she has also got a big ministry background. She was a kids pastor for many, many years at a prominent church in Joburg. And so she has so much. And when it comes to discipling kids and helping parents do that, that is her heart. And so we've got so much that we can learn. It's going to be a conversation between all four of us.
I can't wait.
It's not just a talk and listen. It is a talk, listen, engage, stress, die, high, everything.
Cry? No tears tonight?
No.
Hopefully.
We've got tissues.
Well, when I was thinking about this conversation tonight, I was referring a lot to my own personal journey. Mentioned before, I only have one son, okay? So it's only one little one. But before, he was a little, bundle. They don't really move much, don't really do a lot. Yeah, cry every now and then. But it's only now that we're moving into a space and into a realm where I'm realizing and noticing the emotions are a little bit different. They're very heightened. He's got his own personality that's emerging. And now for the very first time, I'm asking myself, how do I do this? When I think about sort of discipline and guidance and leading him, I'm asking a lot of questions about where do I start. I'm sure you've been there as well. Where do I start? Am I doing the right thing? Am I doing enough? Am I doing too much? And so really what I would like to ask first and foremost, caveat, we have a little bit of a discussion before this, right? So we kind of know where we're going here. But the first question I really want to dive into is, what is the point in this parenting game? What is the outcome? What should I be shooting for? Because there's a whole bunch of goals and a whole bunch of things that we can dive into. But as a God-fearing parent, what am I wanting to get out of this parenting game?
Right, I'll jump straight in there.
Thank you.
So we are wanting to make sure that we raise well-adjusted adults.
Yeah.
So we're not just trying to raise a perfect 2-year-old or 3-year-old or even a 5-year-old. We are trying to raise well-adjusted adults, but we're also trying to raise a disciple of the Most High God. And that's so important, that you change your mindset. And this whole parenting journey is about coming up with a game plan,
right,
and being intentional about what it is that you're wanting to achieve. We're not just wanting a perfect little tot that sits at Pappuccino and doesn't throw its food around.
Wouldn't it be nice though?
It
Just
might
one
be
night.
nice, but that's not our goal.
Right.
Our goal is that we are raising children that are going to go and be lights out there in the world. We want politicians, we want doctors, we want teachers, we maybe even want lawyers that are going to be serving the Most High God.
Maybe.
maybe that are serving the Most High God, and being a light out there in the world. And how do we get from the tot that's starting to express its emotions to a disciple that is on fire for Jesus and ready to take on the world and spread his love to all sorts of different parts of the world? So how do we get from here to there? And that is the journey of parenting. And we are fighting for the heart of each child in that process.
I think there's a lot of misconception, or at least I had different ideas around discipleship. If I look at my own way that I was raised by my parents, even though I love them, that's not what I'm saying, Dad, if you're watching.
I'm not here to throw shade.
No shade. No shade.
Yeah.
But when I start to think about how I was raised and how my parents parented me, and so what I'm wanting to do now with my own kid, I'm starting to realize, hang on, that's a little bit different. I will say that my parents were a little bit more modern in the sense that they asked us questions and they allowed us to express what we wanted in the family or whatever. But that was a lot later on. But I do see now, even when I'm trying to help guide Jet, I do see a little bit of the eyebrow raise, or is that all you're going to do? So what do you feel are some of the, I don't want to say outdated ideas, but what are some of the understandings we have about discipline versus discipleship that we maybe just need to correct on this journey?
I think often parents take more of a reactive approach instead of a proactive approach. So I'm dealing with moment by moment, crisis by crisis, instead of, like what we were saying just now, having a big picture plan. And a lot of the times it comes from a place of fear, like I fear who my child might become. I fear their sinful nature. I fear that they might embarrass me or make mistakes. And so we step into a space of, I just want to control everything they do so I don't lose face. But often what ends up happening is, it's the same with the whole traffic cop idea. You know, we all know what we should be driving on the freeway, and then we see the camera or the cop and we slow down and politely wave and then speed up again. Because we actually don't really care about the rules. Versus fostering that heart connection where even when you're not present, your child's going, how does my behavior impact my relationship with my mom and dad? And I want to take ownership of my behavior because it impacts people relationally. So when you've got a different gang plan, we've got a different end goal. It's not so much about control, but almost about empowerment and teaching a value system that's not dependent on kind of boundaries and structures on the outside, but I can actually do that on the inside when no one's watching.
So it's a moving away from wanting to control every situation and wanting to control my little boy or Duncan's 2 kids to, I just want to foster this relationship. I want them to trust me. I want to build the trust here, and then from there, then we can guide and we can shape. That's really, really interesting. Let's say we opt, you mentioned a little bit of it, Madz, before, but let's say I feel like this style of discipleship or discipline is a little bit new age, or is it actually going to work, and I don't do it. What are some of the things that could happen if I choose not to view it in this way? First connect before we correct. What if I do the opposite? What should I look out for? What could happen?
So I think you've got to be very careful. Are we trying to get the perfect behavior, or are we willing to accept that we're going to have some challenges along the journey? So I think you've got to be willing. If you're going to fight for a well-adjusted adult, you're going to do this over a time of 18 years. Okay, so we can't get it right the first time. So I think take that off. It's not like you're going to go out and everything's going to go perfect. I mean, if it does, good on you. but don't then go around advertising that you're a perfect parent, because I don't think there is such a thing. You're in it for the long haul. You're in it for the journey. And so you've got to work on that. But I think when you do get to discipline issues, you've got to work out, one, you are always fighting for the relationship, you're fighting for the heart of the child. But in a discipline situation, you're going to be working on, what am I trying to achieve out of that? And for us personally as parents, we've worked on, if you disobey, that's something we're going to have a conversation about, where we're going to need to intervene. And if you're dishonest, that's going to be something where we're going to intervene. But before we even get there, so the discipline process doesn't start with the temper tantrum. The discipline process is the discipling process that starts before.
Okay.
I want to tell you that you are God's child. Do you know that you are God's child? You're a sinner, okay? We're all sinners. I'm a sinner. Let's talk about my sin, and let's talk about your sin, and whose you are. And that's where you've got to start. The discipline process doesn't start with the meltdown. The discipline process starts fighting for the heart, fighting for the relationship. I'm praying with you in the morning. I'm reading the Bible. Do you see these characters in the Bible? They made some mistakes. You also make mistakes. How can we make less mistakes together? Did you see I had a moment yesterday in the car because a taxi cut me off? Did you see that? Our mum was not good then when I did that. So modeling it. You have to model for your children what it is to be a disciple of God. You can't just expect them to absorb it via osmosis. You have to be able to talk that through. Also, as much as you say with your mouth, you need to be doing it.
Right.
Because that's what they're noticing even more. You can't say we're going to speak the truth. And, I had a friend of mine once who was speaking truth and talking about how we're going to do things. And she had a little hidey hole in the washing machine where she hid her cake from her husband because she didn't want daddy to see the extra piece of cake that mummy was eating. But the kids all knew about this. But what is that teaching them? That's teaching them that lying is okay. And we all laugh because it is funny, but it's actually not. Because we're teaching our children from a young age, it's okay. Some lies are okay. Some, that's not okay. So we've got to be very careful how we approach how we discipline kids, and we need to do it honestly and see it with a long goal in mind.
And I think parents need to be kind to themselves too, because often we think, oh man, I'm 2-3 years in and I've missed the boat, and oh my gosh, now you're telling me these tools, like, I wish I knew this 2 years ago, and have I messed things up? Not at all. You can't grow a bicep by pushing a dumbbell once. I wish. But
where do I sign up?
Parenting's actually a little bit like cooking. You have those gourmet meal moments where you can spend 7 hours in the kitchen preparing a masterpiece. And then you get takeaway days, but they don't have them all the time. Most of the time it's the consistency of the meat and 2 veg and your starch, and it's parenting is about consistency and repetition and tweaking here and there as we go along, and catching the flops and celebrating the victories, and just working it on a regular basis. And I think the more we're actually just kind to ourselves and just go, you know what? Well, we have a saying in our home, if you fluff it, you fix it.
Right.
And we all fluff it. And when you use these little sticky kind of sayings, it makes it so much harder easier for your kids, because when you find yourself in a fluff it moment, you're able to come back down to their level and just go, I totally fluffed it. Like, I'm not perfect, and I'm not expecting perfection, but I am expecting ownership. And this is what ownership looks like. It's going, I messed up, and I imagine what I did impacted you in this way. And so as you model this, kids start to understand their behavior impacts me. Actually, my behavior can impact them. And it's beautiful teaching moments, even if you fluffed it.
It's like a give and take.
Completely.
I really like that.
And also the opportunity to be able to say, I'm sorry to your kids. We always, in a school environment, you've got to get your 2 kids together. Could you say sorry to each other? Sorry. Sorry. There's no heart in it at all. But how you teach children to say they are sorry is to get down and say, I'm sorry, Mommy messed up. And it's just the most beautiful thing when your kid says, don't worry, Mommy.
Yeah.
That's the one where you want to cry the most, because you think, oh, I really did mess up. And your kid's saying, don't worry. And to be able to say, I'm really sorry, and please forgive me. That's one of the most powerful parts on a parenting journey. Because as much as we've got an end goal for our children, we've also got an end goal for us. We still work in
That's so true.
process here too. We also are still on our discipleship journey. It's not like we're the perfect disciples either. So let's figure it out together. Let's open the Bible. Let's read it together. Pray for me.
Right.
There's nothing more beautiful than your children praying for you. My children have been praying for me for years. I've prayed for them, and tonight was another beautiful example. I've got an 18-year-old son that's praying for me. That's amazing. That's the journey of saying, I'm going to pray for you, you struggling with this, but you can also pray for me. So it's not like we have to be perfect individuals in this parenting journey. We can also be flawed and struggling and having a hard day. And you can say to your kids, Mom's really struggling
And they
today.
can see all of that and learn from it.
Yeah, and you're teaching them through it.
I think you guys are touching on a few things that are probably they killers to connection. So trying to, like, perfection becomes this prison, and we try to put on the big face, and we never say sorry because we can never be wrong.
So true.
And so then it's like it kills connection.
Yeah.
Are there any other, like, killers
Connection
of
killers,
connections
yeah.
that we should be aware of, tracking,
Yeah.
knowing? Because if we're starting there, I love that we've started at the
Yeah.
connection side, get the heart for it, where
Yeah.
we're going.
Yeah.
But there's so many things that can kill
Yeah.
that quick.
I would say expectations. So I think for mums and dads, you have a dream of who your little baby's going to be one day.
Springbok.
A lawyer.
Yeah, a lawyer, a rugby player,
Springbok.
and maybe we'll even just start with sports. I played whatever it is, so therefore my child will play that.
Right.
I played rugby. What do you mean you like drama? No. We do rugby. I do rugby. What we're basically saying is I'm uncomfortable with drama, or I'm uncomfortable with gymnastics. I'm very comfortable with rugby, and therefore you should like that too, because what am I going to do if you like something that I don't?
Right.
I don't know how to handle myself. And so I think expectation is a huge thing. When our child doesn't like the things we like, when you think you're going to have this perfect little princess that's going to keep her room completely tidy and like Prink, and she comes out with a black bike and messed up ponytails, and you're like,
Not the ponytail.
I didn't order that. I didn't want that. That's not what, and I don't. But that expectation, we've got to take the pressure of our expectations off our children. That's a relationship breaker. If we don't understand that God has given us a child that's reflecting His image, not our image. And I think that's a very powerful thing. That breaks relationship way more than anything else. I've seen it in an education space, but I've also seen it with many families that we've worked with. You've got to get out the way.
Wow.
Don't put your stuff on kids, how you want them to behave. If I worked with a kid once, his parents threw this elaborate 4th birthday party.
Ooh.
And the child spent his 4th birthday party under his bed. It was a classic introvert. The parents loved a party. That was completely overwhelming for a child. That was expectations that little kid couldn't handle.
Right.
That's not who God gave them. God gave them a kiddie that really liked 3 or 4 little friends, and mum and dad were like party animals. 101, let's go. And that wasn't who God gave them. And I think that's the thing. We've got to just get out the way and open our eyes to see who has God given us. What gifts might be in my child, and let me take the pressure of my expectations, even though we'll say, I'll never pressure my child to do anything. We come with a set of expectations and backgrounds. Say, I'm thinking, we totally going to do X, Y, and Z, and your child's not necessarily wired that way. And so for me, that's a relationship breaker.
Oh, that's a good one.
Another big one is labeling your child according to behavior. So if a child is messy, instead of kind of just saying, hey, can you tidy up, what a parent would then start goes, you are so messy, or you are so ungrateful, or you are, and then you start to label a child from an identity perspective based on their behavior. And that's so hard, especially when a child is going through the stages of development, because part of their learning journey is making a mess or learning how to pour milk for the first time, and there's more milk on the floor than in the cup. And so if you're constantly attacking that kind of behavior or belittling it or kind of shaming a child in the learning experience space, it starts to create self-doubt. And instead of a child feeling a confident space of developing and exploring and learning and making mistakes, it creates fear and insecurity, and it kind of stifles their ability to explore, which impacts every development of kind of behavior, because then it's like, I don't know how to initiate, because what happens if I do it wrong? Because that means I am a failure. And as a counselor, I see this in the counseling room all the time. One of the biggest lies that people live under is that their identity is based on what they do. If I failed, I am a failure. If I'm rejected, I am unlovable. And it starts from so young. And I think if parents can just understand the power of their words, it's okay to speak to behavior, but don't make it their identity, because then it kind of creates a disconnect and an unsafety between mom and kid, or dad and kid, in the sense of there's something wrong with me. Yeah.
I also think it's really important that you need to, whoever's in your home and is raising your child, you need to be a team. We can't be having mum saying one thing and dad overcompensating on the other end. You need to be doing it together, because the minute you've got mum saying, you are X, Y, and Z, and then dad trying to counterbalance it, you're gonna have a really unhealthy balance in your home on how you approach that. So
why is that? Is that building distrust or confusion in the child? Like, what is that doing to the child if there's different messaging?
Well, it's breaking the relationship between those individual parents. And it also means, like, okay, so I'll go to you if I want this, and I'll go to you if I want that. That's not a team. So you need to be a team when you're a parent. So sit down, come up with a game plan, be intentional, hold each other accountable to that game plan.
Right.
Now, it's not that you're going to be perfect on that game plan all the time. We all know everybody has an off day, even the Springboks. They all have an off day, So be gracious with each other when you have an off day. It's not like, you have to be bringing your A game all the time, okay? I think you just need to have a moment, dear. Go and have a hot bath. I got this one. Let's work it as a team. But you need to be intentional about what you're fighting for and work on it together, because the minute you're separating and labeling differently and overcompensating, you get a really unhealthy balance in how you parent your children, and you're going to raise a different reaction out of them.
What I'm hearing coming out of these connection killers, if you will, are we coining it, Dunks? I don't know. Connection killers. What I'm hearing coming out of these red flags is it doesn't just happen. There's almost an intentionality that needs to go in
Absolutely.
it. There's a game plan that needs to be formed. I think when we are in premarital, or we're dating, preparing to get married, or we're starting off, we speak about a lot of things. We have plans, this is where we're going to live, budgeting, if that kind of this is what we're doing together, this is how the family works. But I don't know if it's just some people, maybe it's just me. Sometimes it feels like you get into parenting and you're just trying to figure it out without so much as how are we doing this together? What is the value of intentionality in this toddler phase discipleship?
It's the whole deal. It's everything. It's the foundation. If you don't know where you're going and why you're doing it, you're going to find yourself unstuck. Also, when the big decisions come, it's difficult to make the right decision when you're emotional. If you say, okay, this is going to be important to us. We are going to spend time together as a family. We're going to prioritize family time around a table. That's going to be important for us. We're going to make sure that we are home together for dinner every night with our children. That's going to be important. Then when something comes up and say, hey, it's going to be over dinner time, no, that's a family discussion. We're going to get back together and we're going to talk about that as a family, because we already said that that's intentional, rather than just, oh gosh, we've got to Friday and we've never sat together as a family this week, because you had a meeting and I had a meeting, and you just sort of one week rolls into another, and suddenly what you kind of wanted isn't happening, and that also builds frustration in parents. Then you're like, oh, we've got to do this big fancy dinner, and you put a whole lot of pressure on yourselves instead of saying, okay, just take a step back, let's put our plan together, and we're going to plan our lives around that. Birthday parties are amazing things, but in the toddler years they can take over your entire weekend, and you get a grumpy toddler by the end of it. And to be honest, you get broken, bankrupt parents who stressed out as well. decide, hey guys, we're not going to do birthday parties on Sundays. We're going to go to church as a family, and we're going to have lunch together. That's something that's important to us, and we're going to stick by that. There are going to be some things that we have to say no to, and that's okay, because that's important to us, because we're not parenting just for the weekend. We're parenting with a long goal in mind. So that's very important about how you're going to manage things. I mean, you bring up trivial matters, birthday parties and time around the table, but funny, that's actually a lot of what glues a family together. So pick your things. Make sure that you're having family holidays together with you. Extended family is great, grandparents are great, but make sure you're with together enough so that you can brand your family. This is who we are. We are a family that does this. This is our tradition. This is what helps you know that you belong to us, because we always have a picnic when we go down to Harrysmith or whatever it is. You've got a brand and a tradition that your child knows, I belong to this. That builds connection. Tradition builds connection, those sort of things. So I think that's important, that you decide that out of the heat of the moment. And as your children hit teenage years, you're not needing to have those conversations. Your children don't even need to come and ask you, because they know, they've grown up with you. They know, oh, no. We know we're going to find ourselves in church on Sunday because that's important to us. Not, oh, we'll see if we've got time for church on Sunday. Because I don't know about you guys, but nobody's ever going to have time for church on Sunday if you're making the decision on a Sunday morning. That's never going to be important, because the duvet has got quite a strong pull.
Right.
And the fact that you had a heavy week has also got quite a strong pull, but you need to make those decisions ahead of time. So that game plan for me is super crucial.
In the scripture says, without vision we perish. So I think to sit down with your spouse kind of regularly and say, like, what are important values to us that we loved about our family of origin that we want to bring in? So this comes from mine, that might come from yours, and what are ours, And then you kind of put those values down and then start to be intentional around building into specific values, so that your approach to parenting, your approach to discipline, your approach to communication, your approach to time management are built around values, not just fluff. And so, I think it's those intentional conversations and then putting a plan together.
I really like that you use the word regularly, because to me what that's saying is, yes, we are formulating a plan, or we're piecing together a plan, but we can try it and tweak it, tweak it according to,
So the saying is, marry your vision but date your path. And that's what we love about maps. They have the ability to recalculate, because sometimes you're going to get traffic jams, and sometimes you need to make a U-turn and just go, or now you're just stuck in a roundabout going round and round in circles, going, man, I just feel like, but it's okay, because these are kind of moments where you can sometimes just recalibrate, because you're not going to get it right every time. And just when you think you've got it right, they grow up another month and enter into another stage, and then you start all over again. So recalculating and flexibility and adaptability and being kind to yourself are crucial in the journey of parenting.
Yeah, there are many roads to Rome. Different ways. You still got the same destination. The destination stays the same. That's really important. But you've got to move. I mean, we've had one parenting game plan, but I think we've gone version, I don't know, 700 and something, because you meeting, okay, so we're trying something new. As your kids grow older, we've always prioritized family time around a table, but that looks a little different when you've got a matric trying to study for exams. Okay, how are we going to do that? How are we going to do something a little bit different here? What's it going to look like when you've now got a new baby in the family, and now bedtime suddenly is now 6:00, or you're still valuing the important thing, but how you implement it is a little bit different. And constantly communicating with your spouse is so crucial on this. It's just go back, let's hold each other accountable. How are we doing on that? But it's not we have to do it. It's not like a strict rules thing. It's how are we going to help each other to achieve this. Does that make sense? Not like black and white, like if we don't do this, we're going to be disastrous parents. And I think you've got to be gracious with it. How are we going to try this better? It's problem solving.
And I think that speaks to the heart versus the control topic we were holding in tension earlier. Whereas if we're trying to hold on to control, that's where it becomes restrictive, black and white. If we missed it, we have to start over, that kind of thing. But if it's the heart, it's, I think we missed it here, let's redirect, let's get back on track.
As much as you're having the heart for the kid, you also got to have a heart for yourself and for your spouse. We're still human. We still have good days and bad days, and we've got to work with that. So we've also got to work with our spouse on keeping the connection. Just like you were talking with our kids, you've got connection breakers with our kids, but we've also got to make sure that we keep that connection open within all relationships of our family.
That's so true.
I think busyness is another one of those connection breakers.
For sure.
I think we've, especially in this particular world, I was in Nelspruit over the weekend. It's a different set of pressures. It's a different set of pressures in Nelspruit. Families can be different there, but I think that is a key thing that can really break a connection, of just not setting time aside for our children and setting time aside for our spouse. That's a key thing that's going to break your connection before you even start with the discipline. Often you find discipline issues are because we haven't spent enough time with either our spouse or with our children. Not that your spouse is necessarily going to have a temper tantrum, but you never know.
We hope.
You never know.
Exactly. Dunks, I'm interested actually from hearing from your perspective as a dad. I know my own guilt cycles that I can get caught up in as a mum, but I'm just wondering from your perspective as a dad in this space, figuring it out, how did you feel in the beginning? How did you wade through all of those feelings, and where are you now?
I think it was before we had the first parenting initiative. We put out a poll talking about like, hey, what's some of the things that like just absolutely shocked you about like jumping into parenting? I remember that we had that poll and questions that come up, and the one I wrote, and we never actually got to it in the initiative.
I was preparing for this one.
I know this was clearly it. But I remember Steve's having a conversation with me about it, just going, that one hit me harder than anything because it's just so true. Because the thing that absolutely caught me by surprise, wasn't ready for, no one could prepare me for, was that selfishness is your greatest enemy. And I just realized I didn't think I was selfish.
Oh, wow.
And then you have a kid and you're like,
I'm very.
I thought I didn't feel it getting into marriage. I didn't feel it as much in terms of like serving Nikita, loving Nikita, and putting her needs above mine. All those type of, that was easy. Like that felt like simple. And then like a little person gets in the equation, and suddenly you just realize it goes to like the nth degree. And I realized, I still have selfishness that needs to get out the way, which is always a difficult thing, because you almost have to, at best, kill yourself for it, but at worst you can go down a hill, and then I'm not even at 10% to give enough to you as your parent. And it's like this balance of how do I preserve my own sanity, my own energy, my own care, my own whatever, but at the same time, so that I'm at least at a level where I can serve you. But at the best, I know I'm the parent, you're the child. I'm dad, you're kid. Like, I know I have to take that responsibility. I'm going to bear that weight. I'm going to work this around. And I think about those moments where you just absolutely know, maybe I'm at the end of myself, and I'm lucky that I have a wife who can pick that up and knows that and can jump in, like you said. I know there's many who sit in a like single parenthood, and it's like they don't have the eject button, and they can just kind of, or dads sometimes also realize we've got sometimes less like quantity, and so we have to fly at quality, because maybe your schedule looks different to mom, you're not with them as much. And I've just found it such a balance to try, and attention to try hold. Like, how do I find that balance of putting myself and focusing on myself enough that I can be useful and do this well, but at the same time give of myself, empty myself, and really connect with the heart. Because for me, it's most of the time, for dads, parents in general, busyness, it's quality over quantity, because we're not with them 24 hours a day. And so how do we make the best out of that time, but still balance, hey, dad needs a minute, I'm going to go play golf. Because if I play golf for 4 hours, you're going to have 8 hours of
better
gold.
dad.
Like whatever, like this is going to be.
Can we do it in
just
3?
Just the reality. We know this when we go on holiday. They know it. The kids know I've got one day, it's golf day. The rest of I'm yours. But there's one day. So I'd love to just hear like maybe some ideas around like that balance of how do we do that? Care for our sin, but then give away.
Oh, that's a good one.
I think we've got to start at the beginning. Where do we get our strength from? Because if we're going to try and parent out of our own strength, we're going to fail 100%. Parenting is done on our knees, guys. And I think it's done on your knees whether your kid's, I don't know, 5 months, 15, 25. Parenting is done on your knees. And it's, God, I need your strength to be able to serve my child, my spouse well. And I also think parenting requires creativity. Maybe you need to start the golf game at 5:30 a.m. And so that you can be creative. I know so many parents who say, okay, I'm going to work in the office until 4 and I'm going to come home and I'm going to make sure I'm there for the crazy busy. I'm going to make sure I'm there for bath time. I'm going to make sure I'm there for bedtime. And then I'm going to carry on working. But I've been creative in the space so I can maximize my time. Right. There's a famous saying, choose where to cheat. So you're not going to cheat your family, but choose, okay, so I'm going to do it a little differently. I'm going to leave really early so that I can miss the traffic. I can get as much work done as I need to do. Right. And I can still be home in time for my family. I'm not going to maybe watch TV. I'm going to identify the time wasters in my life. I'm going to prioritize what's important to me. Get the big rocks in the jar. Okay, so my family is important. And now I'm looking at all these other times, but your phone gives you that lovely thing about how much time you spend on your phone. Oh, it's bad.
What a terrible notification.
It's a bad
screen
thing.
time is up 36%, and you're just like questioning every moment.
What was I doing all that time? Exactly. So, like, do I need to be with my phone as much? Do we even need to watch TV? Actually, in our home, TV has become so not a thing.
That's cool.
At all, because it became a huge time waster. If you think of the amount of time you can just sitting watching a thing. So over the last years, we actually, when our daughter was 2, she's now 20, we moved the TV out of our central living space. And it was just made sense at the time. It wasn't like like highly thought through. It just made sense and it moved. It was the best thing we've ever done because the TV just became not an important thing in our home. And we changed where we spent our time. And you suddenly realize, oh gosh, I actually spent quite a lot of time doing something that we didn't need to do. So choosing where to cheat, working out where you need to spend your time, and being creative is important. So that you can do it, and doing it on your knees. Where you're going to get your strength, and finding a group of people, I think, that are going to support you through it. So you spoke about single parents. I take my hat off to every single parent. I commend you. It is a tough job to try and be mom and dad. That's hard. Find your support crew, because you can't do it on your own either. Find a crew that's going to be your village, that's going to back you up, that's going to say, yeah, I hear you, and be your cheerleaders. You're still going to have to do it because you are that child's parent. Right. So don't put it on to someone else. Don't outsource your parenting. Never outsource your parenting. Okay? This is your child, your privilege to raise that child. So never outsource your parenting, but make sure that you've got your support crew
Back you up.
in place. You've got, when people run marathons, they've got their seconders that come along, running along. You need to make sure you've got a good one. And maybe it's as intentional as going to someone saying, listen, I'm running this race on my own. Please, can you be my backer buddy? Could you rock up with dinner every now and then, because that's what I need. And maybe you've got to arrange it formally to say, this is what I need to be able to succeed. Maybe it's less formal, but make sure you've got a crew around you to support you. And the same, even if you in a two-parent parenting journey, just making sure that you've got people praying for you. That you're not on your own. You can pick up the phone and say, sure, need some help. You've got people in your village. So you're doing it with a village, but you've got people that are there for you. And maybe that's often where those golf relationships come in. Is just needing to process with your own village where you're up to.
I think a mistake often parents also make is that they judge their heart by their capacity. So if I'm in a season where my capacity feels empty, or I'm drained, or I'm tired, then I start to feel guilty, and I kind of go, I'm failing, I'm a bad parent, I'm not. And then guilt parenting then pushes into a place where they're actually pouring from an empty cup, which creates bitterness and resentment and snapping, and as the saying goes, if your output exceeds your input, your upkeep is your downfall. If you're pouring out more than you're putting in, you won't sustain. And I think to be kind to yourself and to manage and to kind of define your heart clearly, because I don't think any parent goes, or even any spouse goes, in 5 years' time I vow to be depressed and grumpy and growling until my kid hates me till divorce us do part. We don't have these vows, but we find ourselves in those spaces. And I think being intentional about being kind to our heart, labeling ourselves accurately. I'm just at the end of myself right now. I need some time out. And to ask for these spaces is healthy. There'll be times where I'll say to my kids, you have your play date time. Like, I'm having my play date time. Like, I need my buddies. I need my fun time because it's important to me. And it's, I think, important for kids to understand that you're human and that you have needs and that you're not perfect. Right. And that as much as they need things, so do you, And it helps them have an appreciation for you when they see that there are times where, what? My ears are full right now. I just need a quiet moment. Right. I want to hear you, but right now is not a good time. Can we meet in 5 minutes? Or, go get the kettle on while I just gather myself. It's just being real and authentic, because then it gives kids permission to do the same. Right.
I'm playing golf tomorrow, so all is well.
At 5:30 or what are we?
6:30.
It's
winter,
too
guys.
cold for
Winter now. You can't do it at 5:30.
Yeah.
I think you've also got to, when you're in those moments, find a way of being creative with your kids. A very good friend of mine once said to me, when you get home after a long day, put the kids in the bath with you. Read a book. Can I tell you, those are some of the best moments. Kids in the bath, all of it, loads of bubbles and a couple of books, because you can just have a moment, but so can they. So learn to be gracious with each other in whatever space that you're in. Cook dinner together. Let's do the washing together, not just mum sitting there trying to figure out where the washing is. So it's finding routines that support each other and things that are really, really special. And that bath time, has become, I miss it, with 3 kids in a bath and mum with a book. Finding a time where, I've had a long day, but let's also figure out how we're going to do this. And so it's finding grace in your own routines.
Yeah. Another great power tool is asking what I call ownership questions. What are you most needing right now? Often we think we've got to come up with an answer to how to fix this moment. Or if you're in a place of distress, your kid is seeing your big emotions and they feel powerless. And so sometimes I'll even, like if I'm feeling emotionally, flat or whatever it is, sometimes I'll say, if you just put the kettle on for me, that'll make me feel really supported by you right now. So kids suddenly start to understand, what do you need most from me right now? Because everyone's different. Some need a hug, some need some time. Right. So, and it actually starts to pull out your love languages, especially when you're triggered. And so helping kids understand that different people need different things grows their awareness of other people's worlds. So even when they are at, loggerheads, and we kind of say, oh, go give your brother or sister a hug, sorry. And the kid's like, I don't want a hug right now, I want them to rebuild my Lego. And so I teach my kids, ask your sibling, what do they most need right now to help fix this? Wow. Because the person that's injured knows best what they need to heal. And so it's teaching them the concepts of kind of understanding the emotional world of others instead of just assuming the emotional world of others. So leaning into those growing spaces is very powerful.
I really love what you're saying about that. To be, we've spoken a little bit about how we're intentionally building this family structure or this plan that we're going to try implement and tweak and see, how we grow as our kids grow. But now I'm wanting to change the direction, and I'm finding myself in that space. My kid has taken the plate and he's looked me in the eye and has thrown it on the floor. He's feeling chuffed.
That sounds hypothetical.
Oh, no, that would never happen in real life, Duncan. No, not my Jethro. Never. And so emotions are high, and I can feel myself getting to a place that I know I don't want to be, but it's how I feel. Where to next? Because these moments, in as much as we like to think they're few and far between, they're not. So now that I have the plan, and I'm trying to recall it, but now I'm in this space. Where do I go from here?
Taryn spoke about, let's make the plan before the heat of the moment. What happens when we're in the heat?
When you're in the heat of the moment. Okay, where are we disciplining? For disobedience and for dishonesty. Now, he didn't lie about dropping the plate because he's looking at you straight in the face. That's disobedience. We don't do that. You are not allowed to do that. In our family, we don't do that. We don't drop our plates on the floor. Pick it up. That's what you need to do. So there's also consequences to your actions. I'm not going to run around picking up your plate. You dropped it. You pick it up. And I think also we've got to be careful in this space, because I think a lot of parents want to be their children's best friends. They want their children to like them. You know what? They don't need to like you. They really don't. You're the boss. Be the boss. You are there to be the parent. Nobody else is going to be the parent. Your children are going to come across lots of other friends, lots of other people. No one else is going to fill that parent space of directing their little lives. And so that falls on you, as sometimes you don't really feel like it. I don't feel like having to deal with the drop plate today, but that's on you. And it's talking about, in our family, this is what we do. I spoke just now about a family brand. This is how our family behaves. This is how. So it's not you. I am also not allowed to drop my plate on the floor. So we've got to be very careful as parents that we don't have double standards. We don't expect one thing from someone and something else from somebody else. Right. So in our family, we don't drop our plates on the floor. So if you want to belong in this family, we're going to pick up this plate, and I can teach you, I can show you, I can model it for you. And I think that's also very important. We've got to model our behavior to our children. Fixing our messes. When we make a mistake, I've got to fix it. Let me show you how I fix it. You're going to watch me do it. You're going to do the same. We're going to do it with patience. If you feel like you are slipping into an anger, walk away and count to 10. Because as much as there might be damage with a plate on the floor, there'll be a lot more damage with an exploded parent. Because the damage that we do with our words will be so much more. So take a moment, walk away. I've got a dear friend of mine who said, "Mummy is just going to lock herself in her room." She did. She locked herself in her room for 2 minutes with the child standing outside. "Mummy, please come out. Don't lock yourself in your room." But you know what? That's okay. Those moments are going to happen. But she recognized, I am going to flip my lid. I need to walk away for a moment and just stand there. And I
so
think
you don't have to address it in the moment. You can take some time and then
just
come back to
step away. I do think with toddlers, the worst thing you can say is just wait till your father comes home, because they've moved on. They don't have the memory capacity for that, and all of a sudden dad's going to come home and wallop them out of nowhere, and they're like, I don't understand what just happened there. That's not helpful. Instant is better, but taking a moment, a couple of minutes to just regroup yourself is, I think, sometimes a good thing, because anger is never a good thing. Disciplining out of anger cannot help anybody. It's going to break the relationship more. But it's raising. This is how we do it, and I'm going to show you how to do it. We can't expect children to know what to do. We've got to show them. No, we're not going to do that. I will show you how you're going to pick up your food. Let's do it together.
I think let's take your example as well and look at it from a
hypothetical example.
Your hypothetical never happens example. But let's pretend that a child has thrown the plate on the floor because they're angry. Okay. Because children, again, feel emotions on extreme levels. They're not angry, they're ferocious. They'll throw plates on the floor. They're not excited, they're ecstatic. They'll drop plates on the floor, And so we've got to help a child understand their big emotions. And so one of the kind of tools I always teach parents is you first name it to tame it. So when a child is feeling the emotion, they often don't have the vocabulary to express what they're feeling, And so the behavior is telling the story. Like, I am so angry right now, I threw my plate on the floor. And so when you name it, it'll sound like, I can see you were so angry that it resulted in you throwing the plate on the floor. So I'm naming what I'm seeing. The power of that is what I call validation listening, where a child starts to experience their value in the parent's eyes. Like, you see me even when I'm ugly. And so you first name it, and then you can start to direct. So the tools I teach with parents is connect before you redirect. So naming it or taming it is connecting with the emotion. And like, I can see you're upset, and maybe I'm wondering if you're disappointed about this or about that. So you're really wanting a kid to see that this person gets me.
Right.
Then you redirect. But throwing plates on the floor is not acceptable. It's okay to be angry, but it's not okay to hit, bite, kick, throw, or whatever the behavior is that you're trying to connect.
Right.
The mistake that parents make is we want to control the behavior first. But when a child's emotional brain is kind of gone crazy, their emotional brain is also known as a reptilian brain, which kind of sounds like a reptile. And you can't have a rational conversation with a reptile. And so those red cards, time out, connecting is so crucial before you can redirect. And once the reptilian brain is calmed down, and that might take 5-10 minutes, sometimes even 30 minutes for a kid, because they're completely emotionally dysregulated. Get your kid to a place where they're feeling calmer. And it might be a little bit later, a few minutes later, half an hour later, where you say, you remember when you were so angry and you dropped your plate on the floor? Then it becomes a teachable moment.
Right.
Well, I just want to show you or just tell you that throwing the plate on the floor is not acceptable. So let's think about what you could do if you're feeling angry next time, and how I can help you. And then they might have creative ideas, they may not have creative ideas, and this is where you can journey with them, because this is the training part where kids start to go, okay, well, that's not acceptable, but I could do this or I could do that. That is more acceptable. And then the next time they're in that space, then you can help guide them. I can see you're getting really angry. Just remember, throwing plates on the floor is not acceptable. Why don't you try this? So yeah.
That's really helpful, because then at least it isn't a case of my kid is just going out of his way to push me on the edge, right? There's things that he's experiencing and feeling, and if I just take the time to maybe understand him on his level, then the heart is there, right? Like, I know that if he isn't trying to hurt me, I can connect with him on that level, and then we can build together from there. That's really helpful.
There's also an opportunity to have a little retrospective. So we do that every night around dinner, still to this day.
That's cool.
We have what was good about your day, what was bad about your day, and what would you do differently. So we're giving them an opportunity to say, okay, that didn't go so well. I'd like to do it differently. And I think the key thing about doing something around a dinner table is when tummies are full, people are a little bit happier, calmer, dads included, mums included. Like when you're eating, you're sitting around and you're engaging in conversation. I think that's so helpful. And so we've always done that. My husband will start it. What was good about your day? What was bad about your day? It helps you to feel heard. And it's often an opportunity to revisit issues in the day, especially as dad comes in and maybe wasn't there for a particular thing. Now it's not. No one's heated. No one's emotionally charged. And you can say, sure, Dad, we had a bit of a thing today. Let's talk about what happened in the car. And it's not an angry, you did something wrong and now I'm reporting you to the headmaster. It's not at all. How are we going to do that differently? What would we do differently next time? But we're out of the heat of the moment, and we can talk through things, retrospectively try and problem solve it. And it's amazing what the kids will come up with, even the little ones. So it started from when they're little. Oh, I did that. Sorry, Dad. And that's okay. It's okay. I hear that you're sorry. Let's work on it together next time. And it's important to close that relationship so that we're building up, that there isn't a thing in the air. There isn't a white elephant that we haven't addressed. The entire family is now aware that there was an issue, and now it's over. Before we go to bed, that issue is now sorted out. We've sorted it out around the dinner table. We've raised it again outside of the heat of the moment, and we've been able to engage it. We've said our sorries. It's okay. Let's try and do that differently tomorrow, and give ourselves permission that we can try again tomorrow, and that's okay.
So much freedom in that. Enjoy it tomorrow. Madz, one last question. Maybe not one last, but one thing I'm really interested in diving into is your theory around empowerment through choice. Let's say, again, hypothetically, you're a person who is a planner, you like things done a certain way. What are some steps that you can take to sort of release that so that your child can be who they need to be, and then both of us are not getting frustrated and blowing up?
Yeah. I think one of the key things is to consider as a parent first, why do I feel the need to want to control? What is my fear? And often the need to control is driven by our fears. We don't want to seem to be failing. We don't want our kids to make bad choices. And so if I can just control absolutely everything, then I can predict potentially, any bad outcomes. But I think the whole thing about giving children autonomy is that, number one of the greatest gifts that God has given us is freedom of choice. And that's how he parents like you have freedom of choice, choose today whom you will serve, but our choices bring life or death. There's consequences to choices, and so you want to give kids from as young as possible the autonomy to start to understand the laws of sowing and reaping, that there's consequences. Like, I can choose to do this, but I don't always have choice over the consequences of what I choose to do. Because that's going to teach them to consider the choices they make, even when you're not present. If I just control everything and I'm making the choices for you, then I'm pretty much raising puppets on a string that have to be dependent on the puppet master to tell them what to do. And often what ends up happening is a lot of children end up becoming incredibly fearful in life because they have no concept of laws of sowing and reaping. They have no concept of consequences, and they become incredibly fearful or even anxious kids because I don't know what's right, I don't know what's wrong. And we live in a culture where a lot of kids don't know how to make choices. And I remember once my youngest was about 4 or 5, and my hubby was doing a little fishing weekend with the boys, and so him and the 2 boys were there, and I came to visit for a cup of coffee in the middle of the day, and Levi was like really torn. He was like, I really feel like I want to come home, Mom, I'm missing you, but I'm so scared that I'm going to miss out on the fish that Dad might catch because he hadn't caught one yet. And he was torn in terms of what was the right choice. And I could see him just sitting in this place of utter tension and fear that he was going to make the wrong choice. And so I just helped him unpack both options and what was he most needing for his heart versus what he was most fearing he would miss out on. And just helped him navigate choices. And then he eventually chose to come home. And I said, is it because your heart needed connection, but you were just worried you're going to miss out? And we just kind of walked him through decision making, because often we kind of fear, like, what is the right decision to make? Like, how do we know? Like, and if we don't teach children the art of making choices, then when they become adults and they're petrified, like, well, how do I know this is the one that I need to marry? What is the wrong choice? And we fear these spaces instead of actually growing in confidence. So I think just starting small. Do you want to wear the red dress or the blue dress? Do you want to, you want to have the apple or the orange, and starting small and giving them choices, and then kind of talking through the choices they make. And what do you think about that choice? Was it a good one? Or do you think you would have chosen differently if you had another choice again? It's just empowerment spaces. So good for a kid.
And I think, actually, sorry, I'm thinking of like moments where I've had this with my kids, and I think that word empowerment that you have is actually probably where you see it. Because, yes, you can have that conversation with your boy around a fishing trip, but like even working it back, I mean, I remember someone once saying, and I've seen it happen, and we've all seen it. If you've had a kid, you've seen this happen. But it's like they're these little scientists because they're trying to work out that the world has like action and reaction,
Yeah.
and so they'll drop the thing on the floor 6 times, and we'll get irritated but they're noticing something different each time. Oh, it sounds like that. Oh, it bounces. Oh, whatever. And I think there's that part where you start to then go, oh, I actually can make choices myself, and then it plays out. And that whole kind of idea around, I mean, a lot of these like parenting gurus and experts will tell you, no, don't say no, just give them the 2 choices that can work, but then they feel like they're empowered to make the choice. And at a level, I get where it goes, but I think this idea of like helping them see, hey, your choice is going to go one way or the other, fork in the road type of a moment, and then we're going to have a discussion afterwards to learn. I think that's where there's, and I've seen it in every little moment, but it connects back to this idea that I think they're exploring the world that they're in, and if that's our responsibility to help them explore it and explore it well.
Well, it's actually part of the stages of development. You know, a 2 to 3 year old needs to figure out autonomy, like I have choice. And then when they get to 3, 4, it's all around initiative. Like I need to be proactive in what I'm choosing to do, and I need to self-lead and at the same time learn how to work with others. And how I do that has an impact. But if I don't know how to make choice when I'm just 2, 3 years old, then how do I self-lead and work with others? And so every developmental stage is important because it builds on the next stage. And so I love what you say, because it's always about reflecting and going back and having those conversations. Everything is about learning, and every opportunity becomes a teachable moment when you use it well.
So then it would be safe to say then, because we're depending on these developmental stages and everything builds on the last stage, but it's never too early to start. We don't have to wait until they're 6 and they
Never
can
too
understand for us to sit down and have a conversation. We can start by meeting them at their level now.
Completely.
Absolutely.
And emotion is a language. You know, often we just assume our kids are going to be able to articulate emotionally what they're feeling, and they're just throwing plates. And, you know, and so most know the mad, bad, glad, and sad. But I mean, I started really young with my kids, and you can buy all sorts of resources. You can download all sorts of resources from just emotional charts. Like, you know, you're watching the emoji movie with your kids and like going, oh, you know, show me an angry face. That's really good. Show me a scared face. And so you're teaching them language. You're teaching them to understand what it looks like in somebody else. And my youngest about 2 months ago, showed me a chart he made at school where he stuck up a massive poster on the wall, and he wrote on it, write an emoji of what you're feeling right now and put your name underneath it. And I said to him, why did you do that? He said, because I want to know who in my school is feeling what, so I know who needs help. He's 8. And he understands the language of emotions and the power of articulating emotions. But I started with them really, really young. And then there will be, like the one day we were at a shop and he said, Mom, that little girl there looks really scared. She's clutching her bottle really close to her tummy. I think she's lost. And he was right. This little girl was in a state of shock and panic because she had lost her mom. Right. But he had learned to read the emotional signals of a little girl and intervene immediately to bring help. And again, train your child. It's never too young, it's never too late. But kids just need tools, you know, because then they can start to feel empowered to accurately articulate what's actually going on in their world. I counsel couples who don't know how to say what they're feeling. It's just, I'm mad. But actually their feeling may be invisible. That's why, you know. But if you can't accurately articulate what you're feeling, well, then you're stuck and you're going to just explode because no one's understanding you. So, yeah, take some of these tools and apply them to help kids grow their language.
Well, I'm so grateful that we had this chat. My favorite reframing of the mind, if you will, I don't know, that sentence didn't sound put together, but what I loved most was that I came into this discussion thinking we were after, how do I discipline Jethro? How do I make sure he's not a bad guy, you know? And I'm walking away understanding, whoa. No. The end goal is to have a disciple, like you mentioned, Taryn, in the beginning, of the Lord. And that means starting today, figuring out, who is he? Is he a drama guy? Is he a rugby guy? And then helping him understand, what am I feeling and why? Maybe asking him to give me a minute or two in my room by myself. But then coming back and like, okay, I need to take you from this space to this space. Because yes, we might know how to do it a little bit better now that we're older, but they're still little. They still need us to help them and to guide them. And that's our responsibility as parents. I'm really grateful for that insight. Thank you so much for sharing. Dunks, how about you? What's your favorite?
I've just loved that in everything we've spoken about. Doesn't matter what type of connection, anything we've spoken. There's still this element of grace. There's still this element of Taryn pushing us to say, hey, this is about dependence. It's about us actually being foundationally based in it, because we don't get it right every day.
No, we don't.
Maybe we mess up the first kid and then we learn some lessons.
What?
Wait for the second one.
Our children
Jethro's just the tester.
What are you saying?
Our children are raised by imperfect parents, and
Exactly.
that's okay. We are imperfect parents dependent on grace. We are also just a child who's loved by God, and I think that's the most important thing, is to turn your child all the time. Jesus loves you. He sent you to us. You're a gift to us. And so modeling that language, getting them to pray and say, pray with me. Mom doesn't necessarily know what I'm doing either. Pray with me. Let's read the Bible together. Those are so important parts of all this relationship building and connecting. We are together, all of just a bunch of disciples on a journey. And that's so important. But we don't have to get it right and perfect every single time. But if our heart and our desire is there and God's on our side, guys, we're raising disciples ready to shine.
That's amazing.
Love it. So good.
Thank you so much. Dunks, are there any final admin points that you want to share with us?
Nothing. We just want to say thank you so much to you guys for joining us.
You're welcome.
It has been amazing. I hope you've taken a lot. We will, obviously, this will be living on YouTube, so feel free to share it far and wide. If you want to add anything in the comment section, we'd love to hear from you. Otherwise, we will see you next time. Hopefully around a similar topic, but even better content, same content. We've got to make it happen.
Right.
Parenting's a journey. There's grace for all of us, and I really do pray that God's going to take us further, and we'll create these amazing disciples who are going to shine for Jesus.
So good.
That's our goal.
Thank you, everybody.
Cool. Thank
Thank
you.
Thank
you.
you. Good night.
It's a privilege.
Bye.
Cool.
And we're